Good morning, Majority Leader Gómez Reyes. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Blueprint for California Advocates podcast. For folks listening, the Majority Leader represents the 47th District, which is the Inland Empire of California. She was first elected in 2016. I can't believe it's been that long. It feels like that was yesterday, but time just goes by so fast. So I am absolutely grateful to have you here. Please share your story.
Thank you so much, Christina. Thanks for the invitation. I've always admired the work that you do, and now in this new role, I'm so happy that you are working to help everybody, empower everyone so that they all know that they can be their own advocate and be the advocate for their community. As you know, I was born and raised in this district. I come from immigrant parents. I've worked hard all my life, and so I've been part of this grassroots, right? Making sure that the people that are in power remember that we're the ones, the voters, the working people, that we're the ones that sent them, whether it's to DC or to Sacramento. And I've worked very hard in that regard all my life. As you know, I picked onions and grapes as a young girl, so I know how it is to be involved in hard work. As you know, I went to community college for 2 years, got my AA, then to USC, got my Bachelor of Science, and then on to law school. And I've been a practicing attorney for over 30 years. And I did that before I came to the State Assembly. I've absolutely enjoyed being here in Sacramento. And now, as you mentioned, I am the Majority Leader for the California State Assembly, the first Latina ever to hold that position. I'm very grateful to Speaker Anthony Rendon for having this confidence in me to hold this role. So I'm looking forward to talking to you about what it is to be an advocate. I meet many advocates and I love talking to them. So thanks for the invitation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So to frame our conversation, the point of this interview and the podcast in general is about demystifying, making advocacy in Sacramento more democratic, really just more for the people, and kind of empowering communities to be able to become more effective in what they're trying to do in terms of getting resources, getting policies that they need to build just, sustainable communities. Not everybody has the luxury of hiring a contract lobbyist or a consultant or having one in-house. And so, there's a huge barrier in terms of coming into this very strange world that we live in and understanding, okay, I shouldn't do this. This is actually going to work completely against me. I want to be focusing on this. As we know, the Democrats hold the supermajority in both houses, and we have a Democratic governor. Politics, in my mind, really is very inter-caucus within the Democratic caucus. And clearly big business understands that because they're saying to themselves, I want to get the votes that we need for our interests. And so we need to approach it that way too. And getting those majority or supermajority votes to pass big, bold structural change is probably the biggest challenge that organizations have. And so I want to talk through how should activists be approaching legislators that don't necessarily agree with them, that may be coming from a different perspective. And this could be Republican, this could be within the caucus, it doesn't matter. From the perspective of organizations winning votes, winning sort of the battle of heart and mind, and approaching often difficult conversations. I'd love to get your feedback on that.
I think what's most important is that our advocates need to remember that they're the ones that sent us to Sacramento. It is their vote that sent us. It is their voice we're taking to Sacramento. So that is, in and of itself, should be very empowering. And when you have many community members who feel the same way as you do, you need to be able to come together. But you're right, oftentimes it's our very community that doesn't have the money to pay a lobbyist to go to Sacramento and to advocate for them. So that's why oftentimes we hear from the very community members advocating for themselves and for groups within the community. For me personally, for my staff, that is the most important part of what I do. When I have a bill that I'm reviewing, that I'm going to be voting on, if I have received an email, a call from one of my constituents or from an organization within my community. Those are the first ones I want to read about. It's not the big interest that I want to hear about first. I want to hear what my community thinks about a particular bill. Of course, there are so many bills that come through. Maybe it isn't one that is on the radar for every single person. But I find that we have organizations, we have groups within our communities that know those bills that are coming to us, that we'll be voting on, that are important to the community. And I always appreciate when they do come to me, to my staff, here at the district, in Sacramento, wherever it is, but the message gets to me. And my staff knows that those are the most important of the comments that I receive that I want to read. During the pandemic, it's been a little different, right? We aren't meeting in person the way we used to, but we can set up Zooms, we can set up phone calls, and whether it's with me or with my staff, I repeat that this is probably the most important part of my job. And I think what's important as advocates is to hold us accountable as elected officials, to remember and to remind us. First, you need to remember as advocates how powerful you are, how important you are. And then you need to also remind us what we went to Sacramento to do. And that was to represent our communities. And when we lose sight of that, then we have a problem. But I am so glad you are doing this podcast to remind people how important they are and how powerful they are.
Well, it goes back to the saying, all politics is local, right? To me, an organization's activity at the local level is the most important thing they can be doing. And even if they're in Southern California and they can't get to the Capitol, that's what district offices are for. And
Right.
Building relationships should be happening through the district offices, in that you all do events locally all the time. And sometimes you just start there. And again, assuming not everybody agrees with everybody, but the building the relationship part and trust over the long term is the most important. What would you say a group should be regularly taking part in? What should be sort of their just regular practices in terms of building their relationship with their legislator?
Well, here in my office, we have had lots of town hall meetings. And if you have an idea on a town hall on a subject and you think, oh, they haven't done that one yet, call my office. We're always looking for great ideas. We're very responsive to the community. We're just a phone call away.
Yeah.
You pick up the phone, you call my office at 909-381-3238, and somebody's going to talk to you. Somebody's going to listen to what it is you have in mind. But we have to be willing to also listen to both sides. So if you have a very strong opinion about something, please understand that somebody else may have called us with just the opposite opinion. But if I don't hear from one side and I only hear from the other, then that's a problem too.
Right.
So sometimes we are just a phone call away and we want to hear from the community.
How should advocates think about when they get their meeting with their representative who may not be on board and they're not entirely sure how to approach it? What is, in your perspective, the effective way to have it be a productive meeting?
Well, be sure you know what your ask is. Often people come in, so maybe you're meeting with the legislator just to give them information. That's okay. But if you're coming in and saying, please vote for this or please vote against this, be sure that by the end of your meeting with that legislator, you say, can we count on your support for AB whatever or SB whatever? Or can we count on you voting against and speaking against a particular bill? You may or may not get a commitment, but be sure that you know what your ask is and be sure that you ask it by the time you finish. Also, another thing that's really important is, you're right, Christina, these relationships are so important. Get to know your legislator so that they don't hear from you for the first time when you're calling in to blast them. Find out what it is that's important to your legislator. Obviously, they were elected for a reason, and the majority of the people voted for them. Maybe it was a low voter turnout. Who knows what it is, but they're in office. So if you have a particular issue, you want to make sure that you are educating your legislator. You want them to leave that meeting knowing more about your issue than they knew before. So that when, let's say that you are for a particular issue. Let's talk about warehouses. Let's say that you're part of a group that feels that there should be more warehouses in the community.
Yes.
There's another group that's trying to say that there should be less warehouses in the community. Be sure that you provide all the information as to what is positive about the warehouses. And the group that is against it, be sure that you talk about everything that is negative, whether it's the air quality or the types of jobs, or the lack of benefits, whatever it is that you want to talk about, be sure you go in with the information and know that the legislator is looking at both sides, but you want to make sure that your side is very clear. So that, and oftentimes you do know where your legislator stands and you already know they're not going to agree with you. That's okay, but you want them to know why you believe the way you believe. And that trust is extremely important. I have lots of people who come talk to me who they already know I don't agree with them. They already know that from my voting record, how I'm going to vote, but I want to hear from them because they may bring up a subject or bring up an issue that I had not thought about. I can ask the advocates on the other side, well, tell me more about this. I want to make, when I vote, I want to vote on things having full knowledge of what I'm voting for or against.
What I'm hearing you say is giving your legislator the benefit of the doubt, not assuming that there's no movement to be had, that there's no progress to be had. And sometimes just within the process of listening, you can have a victory you don't even realize you're having. Yeah,
It's true.
and unity is what we need to get the type of big, bold changes that we know we need to combat poverty, to address climate issues. What do you see as opportunities, especially moving into 2022, for unity? Like where should advocates be thinking about making their case and really building a coalition within the legislature?
I think finding common ground. I think that's probably the best thing. I will tell you that you will know what leads us, what influences us. For me, I will tell you that since going into the state assembly, I am most interested in helping our vulnerable communities. I want to emphasize equity. I want to emphasize inclusion. I want to emphasize justice. I want to prioritize working Americans over corporate profits or corporate interests. I want to fight for economic and social equity. I want to advance civil liberties. I want to ensure that our families are not facing poverty and that we provide whatever it is they need to provide the pathways to stable jobs and healthcare. I want to provide students with debt-free college. I want to protect our environment. This is who I am. And so when you come talk to me, you don't have to convince me to protect workers because you already know that's what I want. You don't have to convince me that civil liberties are important because you already know that's important to me. But if these things were not important, then you want to share lived experiences as to why civil liberties are important. And maybe it's sharing your own story as to what happened, or maybe it's to share about your college debt and how that's just bringing you down. Maybe there's a bill that's coming up on getting rid of all college debt. Then you want to talk about your personal experience. These are the sorts of things I think that make a difference. But Cristina, you're also right in talking about finding that common ground. I'm not going to be able to, not usually, sometimes yes, but I'm not going to be able to get all of my legislation passed with just my friends voting for it. I have to expand my list of friends, and I want them to trust that when I share something with them, a particular issue, they know where I'm coming from. I'm not going to come up with statistics that are lies. I'm not going to make up an organization. When I come to my colleagues, I'm talking to them with truth that they can count on, that they can trust. These are the sorts of things, and you build these relationships. You want a colleague to stretch a little bit for you. As a legislator, I may have a bill that I need one more vote, and so I have to talk to a colleague that normally would vote against it, and to share why it is so important to my community, or why it would be so important in their community. And if they believe me, if they trust me, they're more willing to stretch for me on a particular vote. If they have nothing, I've never talked to them on any bill before.
Right.
This is the first time I'm talking to them.
Right.
I'm likely to get them to come with me.
That's a very good point. If an organization only shows up right before a vote, and it's a hard vote, you have not done the work that you need to have done before you got there. This is a long-term process that takes years sometimes.
It does, and that's why, as you said, the relationships are extremely. As soon as I got there in 2016, I wanted to get to know who my colleagues were, not just in the Assembly, but also in the Senate. I wanted to know who was going to be reviewing and voting on my bills, and whose bills I was going to be reviewing and voting on. But, go back to our advocates. They are the most important. And I want them to feel absolutely empowered, because my opinion often comes from these meetings I have with the advocates. When they come in mass before the pandemic, I would love seeing everybody with the same t-shirt. And I knew they were united on a particular issue, and then sharing their personal stories makes a difference. It absolutely makes a difference.
Yeah, leading with stories is just a brilliant tactic, and getting as many as you can across, the spectrum of people and how an issue impacts them. What tangible, actionable tip would you give to a community organizer, a grassroots activist, or even someone who maybe they are familiar with Sacramento? What would you say, here's one thing that you can walk away from this conversation and do it?
Contact your representative, whether it's a call or a letter, an email. Contact them. I'm so-and-so. I'm a student at such and such a school, or I work with such an organization, or I'm a member of this particular, and I wanted to introduce myself. I live in your district. I voted for you. I didn't vote for you, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I'm interested in this subject. And I wanted you to know that if there is something that I can help with because of my experiences, please reach out to me. I look forward to working with you in the future. This is your first connection with your elected. If they have a town hall, or if they have coffee with conversation, a cafecito con conversación, as we call them, attend those. Ask your questions. Pick up the literature from your legislator, but reach out to them. And if you're part of an organization, go see the legislator, or call the legislator, or do a Zoom with a legislator as a group, so that they now know there is this group that has this interest. So if there's something that's coming up in the future, they can certainly reach out to you. And when you call them on a bill, it won't be the first time.
I love that. I love the concept of becoming almost like the go-to organization on an issue.
Yes.
And again, not assuming that you're always going to agree, but when that legislator wants more information on how this is going to play out in real life, they know who to call. Majority Leader, what are your big bills, proposals that you're contemplating for next year? What is your agenda?
Here in the Inland Empire, I've got to tell you that one of the biggest issues that we have is our air quality. And so making sure that we have legislation that protects the environment, protects our jobs, finds those balances, that's extremely important to me. I do have a bill that we made, a 2-year bill, that very specifically is going to have a buffer zone around warehouses. Build warehouses in the middle, within 100 feet of a school, as is the case now, or, within 100 feet of residences, which is the case now. So find that buffer zone protecting businesses, and the bill is AB 1547.
Okay.
Finding those, I will tell you, Christina, the reason that I made this a 2-year bill is that I wanted to be sure to have the conversations with all of the stakeholders. So I want to talk to the environmental justice experts. I want to talk to labor. I want to talk to the people that have been suffering from asthma. I want to talk to the American Lung Association, which has come to see me a number of times. I want to talk to all of those. I want to talk to those who are building warehouses, if this is their business. I want to talk to the warehouse workers. I want to talk to the school, to the school leadership about the effect of having warehouses so close to them.
Mm.
If we can find a way to make sure not to stop a business, but to make sure that we remember that we have to protect the children first and protect the homeowners first, I think we'll be able to find a balance. Another one is AB 1389 that has to do with transportation, making sure that as we transition to cleaner air and cleaner vehicles, that we also invest money in the most disadvantaged communities. And so we're trying to find that balance also. I'm working with Senator Lena Gonzalez on that particular, she has a similar bill, and we're working on that very closely. And again, trying to find that balance, making sure that just because we can put a bill through and get it signed and get it to the governor's desk, that isn't what we're looking for. We're trying to find ways that we're not going to cause serious problems for one group or one group of stakeholders.
Right.
Another very important area for me is housing, especially leading to home ownership. We recently had a housing tour. We have a working group, State Assembly, a housing working group, and we're looking for ways to provide affordable housing. So transitioning from homelessness to transitional housing, to permanent housing, and then to home ownership. That's the American dream, right? That's the American dream. We want to find ways to transition, and making sure that what we do always puts our families first, always puts our children first, always makes sure that it's the human being that we're putting first above everything else. Something that you and I have talked about is that we're looking forward to finally getting past COVID-19. We've had shutdowns, we've had learning loss, we've had loss of life, we have to be able to get past this, and we're only going to be able to get past this together. Not one group or one party. Nobody's going to do this alone. We have to do it together, finding a way, getting past this, and then bringing everybody up again together once we can get past this, and knowing that we're going to have a recovery period. We're going to roar back, as California has said, and build back better, as our President Biden has said. But we have to make sure we don't leave anybody behind, because different people have been affected in different ways. And that's another beautiful way that our advocates can be involved, because there are some advocacy groups that represent particular groups that were hit harder than others. And we have to make sure that those voices are heard here locally, but also in Sacramento and in Washington, D.C. It's those advocates that are the most important. And it's those stories. When I hear from groups that have come over to talk to me about the asthma, their children have asthma as a result of the diesel trucks, those are the stories I want to hear about. When I hear from families who are basically homeless, going from one couch to another, those are the stories I want to hear about. And those are the stories that make my conviction even stronger about what I want to fight for when I'm in Sacramento. Even if it's not the most popular thing, I know I'm representing the people who sent me to Sacramento, and that I have to continue to do that. And if I don't, I want my community to remind me, to hold me accountable. And I want the community throughout California to remember that they need to hold their representative accountable to them.
Well, Majority Leader, I can tell you, you are a champion, and you know, the advocacy community, the progressive advocacy community absolutely celebrated your appointment to leadership. And you are absolutely among the legislators I most respect in the legislature. And I will always feel that way. So I thank you for always valuing and uplifting the most marginal communities. That is who you are authentically, and I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I've got to tell you that throughout the years since I got there, having you come in with groups that and preparing them, you've done such a great job in that regard, because it isn't just saying, okay, let's come in as a group. You work with the groups and you train them to make sure that they know, they have their agenda, and they're not going to let the legislator dictate what's going to be said. The groups that you've brought in to talk to me, I've always appreciated it, that they come in with an agenda, and one person is going to share one part of the story, and then for another part, you have somebody else who's going to share another part of the story. This kind of preparation makes a difference. You'll have some legislators like me where, you come in and the group that you're coming in with, I want to spend the time with all of you.
Yeah.
Some legislators who say, I have 5 minutes or I have 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And the preparation you have with the groups that you bring in is extremely important, because by the end of your 5 or 10 minutes or half hour, you've got all the information in, and you've got your final ask. Makes a difference. So I want to thank you for always doing it in a way that makes us all listen to what it is you bring and what your advocates bring.
Thank you. And any last words before we sign off?
Well, I just want to thank you so much. Honestly, it's great to be here with you. The fact that we are talking about empowering our community, I'm all for it. I want the community to feel totally empowered, whether it's with me or it's with DC or with your local electeds. We are here to serve you. And anything that my office can do, my office will do it. I will do it. So reach out to us. We're always available. And I think
your constituents are very lucky people, is all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.